Hi, Real Recapped here. Today we are going to be taking a look at a thriller horror movie from 2008 called The Happening. Spoilers ahead, watch out and take care. The movie begins in Central Park, New York. Two women are walking along the park, chatting, until they sit down on a bench. One of the women erupts in a weird repetition of incoherent words and phrases. Suddenly, every single person in the park comes to a halt, as if frozen in place. Slowly, the woman who spoke confusedly removes her hairpin from her bun and stabs herself in the throat until she's dead. The next shot is on a New York construction site on the ground. Two workers observe and call for help as more and more men jump from the building, committing suicide as they hit the pavement. Something is happening. Following the inexplicable events of The Happening, the movie switches location to a high school in Philadelphia to introduce the main character, Elliot Moore. He is a science teacher discussing the disappearance of bees with his students. He asks one particular student who remained quiet during the discussion what he thinks, and he agrees the bees' disappearance is an act of nature that we will never understand. After the bell rings, the principal calls for a teacher conference in which he breaks the news of the happening in New York. While under the impression that it is a terrorist attack in the form of a chemical weapon, as of now, the government hopes the chemical weapon, which blocks brain receptors for survival and self-preservation, will remain contained within the New York area. Students and teachers are sent home, but not before Elliot confesses to his math teacher, colleague, and friend, Julian, that he is having problems with his wife, Alma. A short while later, Elliot and his wife Alma meet with Julian and his young daughter, Jess, at the train station to flee Philadelphia in case the virus spreads to other big cities in the Northwest. The train ride is uneasy as people receive text messages, calls, and videos about the virus's effect on the population. Alma is acting suspicious as she repeatedly tries to hide the phone calls she is receiving from a guy called Joey. She lies to Elliot about him. In the meantime, we are shown a scene in Ritterhouse Park, Philadelphia. Again, the wind blows through the trees and people come to a halt. A cop passing through halted traffic reaches for his gun, shoots himself, and other people start doing the same with his gun. Back on the train, the passengers are forced to get off in the middle of nowhere. Elliot asks the conductors about their whereabouts, a small rural town in Pennsylvania, and why the train came to a sudden and premature stop. The conductors ominously claim they lost contact with everyone. The crowd gathers in a local bar, and Elliot distracts Jess in an attempt to calm her down, while Julian tries to reach his wife on his cell phone. The last time he talked to her, she claimed to be on a bus heading towards Princeton. Suddenly, people started receiving videos about an incident in Philadelphia Zoo, where an animal caretaker willingly let lions bite his arms off and kill him. The people in the bar grow restless. So the bartender moves the television for everyone to see. The news is on, stating the virus has spread to the Northwest. And the bar is located right in the middle of the deadly zone. A random man stands up and announces their doom, if they are to stay in this rural town. Immediately afterwards, people start to storm out and drive away in their cars. Elliot pleads with the car owners to take Alma, Jess, Julian, and him out of the deadly zone. Rejection after rejection. When everyone seems to have deserted the place already, Elliot finds some people willing to take them. But Julian decides to drive with some other people, heading towards Princeton to pick up their family before leaving the Northwest altogether. Julian wants to go with them to look for his wife, and leaves his daughter Jess in the care of Elliot and Alma. As Julian and his car companions enter Princeton, they see bodies hanging from electric lines and trees. Julian tries to calm the girl in the back of the car, and orders the others to stuff their clothes into the open surfaces so that no air can enter. Unfortunately, they do not notice a hole in the ceiling until it is too late. Soon thereafter, the car crashes into a tree, killing all passengers except Julian. He stumbles out of the car, sits down in the middle of the road, and aims to kill himself. Unaware of Julian's fate, Alma, Elliot, and Jess are in a car with a middle-aged couple who stop at their home to pick up some essentials and food. While they wait for the woman to pick up some sandwiches for the road, in the couple's greenhouse, the man theorizes the virus stems from plants prone to human stimulus. As they continue driving down the road, they find bodies ahead of a crossroads. Before Jess can see the bodies, they decide to drive in another direction. But a military vehicle emerges from the road and warns them about the military base up ahead. Apparently, the soldiers stuck themselves into the barbed wire. Many more cars pull up from all directions, recounting similar events. Still worried about Julian's whereabouts, which they cannot reach on his cell phone, the man who drove them lets Elliot know one of the women in the crowd is talking to her daughter in Princeton on the phone. Elliot rushes to the woman to ask what the situation is like in there. The girl on the phone is upset and crying, and hysterically stutters about how everyone on the street is dead. Elliot tells the girl on the phone she should close all the windows and doors. As she does, Elliot and her mother can hear the wind howling and glass shattering through the phone. The mother wails in grief and shock since the girl just killed herself. Elliot and Alma assume the same terrible fate affected Julian and his wife. Jess is now an orphan, whom they need to take care of. Elliot postulates that the chemical weapon now seems to occur in small towns too. This means the group of people amassed on the road is in danger. The private decides it is best to split the group up and walk to a nearby isolated town 90 miles away. A doctor who lives there will lead the way, thinking that the suicides only happen in large groups. Elliot, Alma, Jess, and 2 teenage boys walk ahead of the rest of the group. As the wind blows through the grass again, they hear gunshots from behind. The group is stuck between wanting to intervene and the need to protect themselves. Elliot comes to the conclusion that large groups stimulate the plants to release the chemical toxins, which make people want to kill themselves. Reluctantly, the small group marches on. Alma admits to having gone on a date with Joey and having lied about it. The teenage boys try to give Elliot relationship advice. Soon, the group finds a fully furnished house left empty. However, they soon realize that everything in there is fake food, fake drink, and fake technology. It is a model home. Not having found any food or real shelter, they decide to move on. As they leave, another group gets closer to the house. After another breeze of wind, people start killing themselves with the lawnmower. Scared and in need of shelter, Elliot, Alma, Jess, and the teenage boys look for another house nearby. When they find one, the doors and windows are sealed. Elliot bangs on the door, begging for someone to let them in and help the small child. A man answers and orders them to leave his premises since he doesn't want to let the infected air enter. The teenage boys vehemently refuse and start kicking the windows in violently. The man pokes a gun out and shoots the boys before Elliot can intervene and warn them. Now, only Elliot, Alma, and Jess are left to wander alone through the rural area. After what seems like ages, they find another isolated house, which seems to be deserted because there are no electricity lines supplying it. As Elliot stands on the front porch to peek inside, an old woman stirs on her swinging chair and invites them inside for dinner. Dinner is a quiet and awkward affair. The woman lives alone, grows her own food, and has no means of staying in touch with the outside world, hence the lack of electricity. She tells them she has no need for the world and doesn't want to know what's going on when Elliot starts to tell her about the world events. She does let them know about a spring house that is connected to the main house with a speaking tube, which was used to hide slaves moving up north. As Jess goes to grab some more food, the woman slaps her hand and reprimands her for taking what's not hers. Yet the old woman still goes to invite the small group to stay the night as it is getting dark. Alma, Jess, and Elliot sleep in one bedroom. And when Elliot wants to retreat to the bathroom, he sees the old woman in her nightgown, accusing them of being thieves. Elliot calms her down. The next morning, Elliot walks into the living room, looking for Alma and Jess. He enters the old woman's bedroom and sees a child-sized doll on her bed. Creeped out, Elliot scares when the old woman emerges from the dark corner behind his back, repeatedly accusing him of theft. She opens the front door to kick Elliot out. But as she exits herself, she inhales a gust of wind. Now, Elliot is in a rush to find Alma and Jess to warn them about the wind and their host. Eerily, the old woman starts circling the house and smashing her head into the windows until she eventually kills herself. Then, Elliot starts hearing Alma and Jess's voice through the speaking tube. The girls are in the spring house across the garden. He orders them to close all the doors and windows and stay where they are, so the wind cannot get to them. Through the speaking tube, Alma and Elliot reminisce about their first date. Almost in a goodbye. Thinking they are going to die soon anyway, they want to get together. So, they meet in the middle of the garden. But the wind stops, and nothing happens. The 3 of them go back into the house and survive. 3 months later, the survivors are all back in Philly, which seems to be back as usual. even though the streets are much emptier. In a townhouse, Alma gets Jess ready for school before ushering her onto a school bus. When Alma goes back inside, she finds out she is pregnant. She goes outside to wait for Elliot's arrival and joyfully tells him. The TV is on the news again, and a scientist discusses the tragic events in the Northwest as a warning about the environment reacting to humankind's population. He ends by saying that it was an act of nature, and we will never understand it, just like the high school students said in Elliot's science class. The final scene is shot in the Jardins du Louvre in Paris 2 years later. The park looks as lively as ever. But, as the cameraman focuses on two guys, one of them starts repeating odd phrases. Suddenly, people came to a halt. The audience knows what's going to happen as screams erupt. And that wraps up our recap for the movie, The Happening. Feel free to drop a comment below as to what we should recap next. Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to turn on notifications. Thank you for watching, and see you next time on Real Recapped.